All right, hello again, and welcome to another Raptor Circus feedback session. This time we have a new game, yay! And first I'll introduce the panelists, then I'll introduce the game. I'm going to do this from left to right as how I see it on the screen. So first we have Darius,
Hello.
then we have Josh Sutphin,
I am he.
and then we have Lyle Cox,
Hello.
and I am Vince Betteridge. Today we're doing Darius's game, which is called Flame Warrior. We have some screen of it. I'm going to actually present that to everyone right now. And I'm going to let Darius kind of introduce his game and then kind of push the conversation in whatever direction he wants it to go to start off with. So without further ado, go ahead, Darius.
All right, so Flame Warrior is a kind of a turn-based real-time strategy game. Well, you have real time and then you can pause it and do whatever you want. Why don't we go ahead and start a new game? So this is a little bit of exposition and instructions. So you've got this map of your galaxy, and you can go around to different planets and visit the planets and take missions. And the objective is that you've got 30 days to prove yourself the greatest flame warrior, and to do that by earning lots of cash and fame. And as you visit different planets, you'll occasionally get random events. I think there's only 3 or 4 in the database at the moment, so you see a lot of the same ones. And you can click on a planet when you're there to edit your ship. And I was very interested in feedback on the UI in this area. Yes, it's still pretty rough, but basically you've got the shop over there. You can hit the button at the bottom of the view inventory button to switch over to your own inventory, and you can pull parts off your ship and stick them in your inventory, or you can pull them off and sell them. And yeah.
Maybe all the way back. Do you want us to start smashing on this screen right now, Darius, or do you want to finish the tour first?
Sure, let's go finish the tour. Go ahead and hit close, and you can also yeah, go ahead and hit close.
Okay. You want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, so click on the flag to take a mission. Tells you what you're going to get if you win.
Okay, here we are.
And you can click on the arrows to jump directly to whatever ship they're pointing at. And those are the enemies, and you can set up your ship's trajectories by moving the arrows around and rotating them. The green arcs are your firing arcs. Now, one thing that works a little better is if you use a few arrows to, instead of stretching them real long, use shorter arrows to guide your ship. One thing that it will do is, even when it hits the end of the arrow, it'll just keep going. So you don't have to, if you want it to go straight, you could just let it go straight.
Right. I think we can actually see that if we start and we watch this guy.
I'm excited to see your battle plan, Josh.
So we'll see him go past the waypoint there. Now, he never stops in this case, right? He's truly
Right.
frictionless. Unless I give him some new orders. Actually, we'll just leave missiles in line for that. That guy just charged that. Oh, this guy's a missile ship too. So we get our missiles there. This guy's gotten too close for my missiles.
You flip around and use your guns on him.
Yoink. So one thing that I found myself doing is using the little timer, which changes the amount of time that it takes me to approach the waypoint. Adjusting the timer at a final node like this to try and affect something close to a stop.
Right.
So he spins around, bring the guy. Oh, the guy got out of range. Who? Stop running away from my weapon! What's going on up here? This guy got useless.
Alright, that's probably a thorough enough demonstration.
You can right-click on the background and hit quit if you want to get out.
Well, I can't really right-click in the web player.
Oh, right. Oh, you can restart the web player. Get you out.
If you guys want to talk about stuff, I can just keep running this in the background for the sake of ambiance.
So we can just talk about the combat since we're here in it right now. First impressions by me about the combat is, like, the learning curve is so extreme.
Yeah, you should have seen it a few months ago.
I would say it still takes, like, a Herculean amount of patience to get anywhere near a competent strategy for anything past the first level. Like, the first level, I was able to get past. My strategy is so sad, though. My strategy is to clump all my ships together and then try to overlap as much of my green arrays as possible, and then just keep tweaking them as the enemies approach. Because anything else, I would just get picked apart piece by piece. So I actually couldn't develop a strategy beyond that. It seemed like doing all of your advanced spline maneuvering was just getting me killed more than anything else, when I was actually trying to not die. I mean, it was fun to move around ships. I actually think it's more fun to move your ship around than it is to have it overlay a green cone or rectangle on an enemy and have it fire. I was actually getting more of a joy out of just the movement of my planes than I was out of that.
Interesting.
So I have a question. So you kind of have this real-time thing where it only stops when you hit pause, right?
Right.
Is there I'm curious why you decided to go that route rather than more of a turn-based, something like what's that shooting game where you basically set up your turn similar to this, then you hit play, and then it acts it out and you can't intervene then.
You're thinking gratuitous space battles?
That is one that works that way. I'm thinking of a shooter one. Actually, I can pull up Steam and probably find
Frozen Synapse?
Yeah, Frozen Synapse. So I guess, yeah, I'm just curious what makes this system better than more of a slow, I guess, a slower paced or turn-based type of style than.
Right. I think part of it was that I did have a turn-based scheme for a long time, and it would basically give you the ability to accelerate in one direction. You could rotate your ship and have it accelerate, and I had some people play tested it. A lot of people expressed frustration in not having a lot of control over what direction their ship was pointed, and also when they would just be maneuvering around just trying to get somewhere, the frustration of having to wait for the turns and reposition everything. And so I figured by adding the waypoints that would give you a little more control over the ship. You can have it rotate as much as you want, and gives you the accelerations and positions that you can get to from the different nodes. And I figured with the ability to pause, I didn't think I'd gain anything by enforcing a turn-based. If you notice during the missions, you probably missed it, it's a pretty small button. Up near the pause and play button, there is a play button with a line. And if you hit that, it'll advance 5 seconds, and then it'll automatically pause the game. Yeah, up in the top right. There. And so I figured that would kind of simulate a turn-based.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll give you that. So, did anything come to mind as ways of improving the combat, making it more interesting?
Well, I'll be honest, I had a ton of fun in your tutorial level, just zooming around asteroids.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that feels like it's missing from the main missions, is there's no level geometry, so there's no like cover or anything. Mm-hmm. Maybe later ones have it. I haven't gotten very far, but like the completely empty map, I just sort of cruise straight for the dudes, and then we end up doing the little flying in a tight circle around each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot for one person's brain to handle all the trajectories that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got the players mapped out, but then they can't really predict what the enemies can do, because the enemy's brain knows what to do better than I ever could. So it always seems to get to a point where I felt like I need to set up an ambush, because the AI is programmed to come and get me. So the only real advantage I have is to set up a attack in advance. Basically, if I was outnumbered at all, that's the only strategy I felt like I could win with.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to change your design too much, but I really did like exploring the asteroids and whatnot. Jeff, could you mute yourself for a second?
So I have a question, or a comment, I guess. So it seems from Vince's perspective, it's there's too many things going on, or it's too complex to control all of them. Do you have 4 ships in most levels, or does this number of ships cap at a certain point? I have to say, sorry, I didn't, new baby and everything, I didn't get the chance to.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But,
part of some of the random events add additional ships to your fleet. Some of the games that inspired this is like Flotilla, if you've ever played that, by Blendo Games, or there's Weird Worlds, Return to Infinite Space. Was another inspiration. And those are kind of games where you move around a map, have random encounters, have different people join your squadron, and I guess I thought it was more interesting with more ships, but it might actually, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that might not be the case, that maybe less is more.
It could be that you might want to test and see how complicated or how frustrated people get with 2 ships compared to 3 ships compared to 4 ships. And it might be that you want a few stronger ships in your mission, and then if you have additional 4th or 5th ships, you know, they're like extra small guys that they don't take a whole lot of thought to put into them. Where maybe they're just more reconnaissance type ships, or like one really big shot ship that doesn't take a lot of it doesn't take a lot of micromanagement, I guess is what I'm saying, right? And yeah, that's one way of going if you find that's an issue.
That's a good idea.
I want to throw out 2 things that I think would help actually a lot with running the combat. One is that when I'm like zoomed out, which I feel like I kind of want to be zoomed out like basically all the time, because everybody's really spread out. It becomes very difficult for me to read which ships are mine and which ships are the enemies. Like, I kind of wish that, and maybe this wasn't on all the time, maybe this is something that only turns on once you zoom out past a certain threshold, that I either had like a brightly colored red and green icon or like a little ring like you see in some RTSs, so that I could recognize the ships as sort of like a little colored dot when I'm zoomed out. And the other thing that would be nice is, like, in the screen right now, I've got this ship selected and I can see his forward firing arc, and so that's great. But I can't visualize the effective firing arcs of any of my other ships in my fleet right now. I actually have to go click to them, and since it's kind of hard to find them in the first place, like I think I lost a ship down here, you know, and trying to figure out how they overlap and what the relationship between my different squad mates is. Obviously, you don't want to just have them all on at the same time because you'll have a mess of green all over the screen. But if the unselected guys showed either a way faded down version of their firing arcs or like an outline only version of their firing arcs, it might help a lot more to coordinate these multi-ship strategies, because I feel like that's where this gets, for me, gets like tactically interesting. If I'm just flying one ship around, I'm just going through the motions of get near enough the guy and point at the guy and wait for the guy to die. But as soon as I have 2 or 3 ships, now I start saying, okay, can I have this ship bait this guy this way and the other ship come around behind him and this guy can flank, or like I've got these 2 guys down here that I'm kind of trying to do like some close attack stuff on these guys, but I've got this missile ship out here trying to bombard them from long range. Like, this starts to feel interesting to me. It's just that because of some of the interface ambiguity, it's trickier to set this up than it feels like it should be. But someone down here is straight dead. Yeah, there we go. All right, double kill.
Another thing with there are different types of, like, there may be some players that like the having 4 really complex ships and setting up these nice strategies, and then there may be other players who enjoy different aspects of the game, and I don't know if you care about them or not. Right? That's something for you to figure out. But one thing you could experiment with, if it still fits within what you want the game to be, is having another style where you have 1 or 2 large ships and then like add-on ships that kind of have their own AI, and those are, instead of like big guns, you have like a big carrier ship, and you have these little mini ships that come out of them as AI, or just your 3rd and 4th ships are like AI robot controlled ships that you don't have to micromanage. You just point them at a target or something. And maybe that appeals to a different type of player than the micromanaging 4 different ships.
That's a good idea. Definitely have to give that some thought.
I have some ideas for stuff that can be on the lower end of the difficulty curve, since we jump straight into dogfights, which I can only conceive as the hardest part of this. So we have navigating an asteroid, like navigating terrain and stuff, and that could be really fun. Like, if you set up a couple more limitations on ship movement, that could get really interesting, like trying to navigate your ship through an asteroid field that's stationary, and then like an asteroid field with some moving elements. That could get really, really exciting to try to navigate your ship through that. I think that by itself could be fun, and it could exist alongside this perfectly. Another thing is, more stationary enemies. The only stationary enemy I got to experience was also in the tutorial.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, as it's somewhere lower on the difficulty curve than a dogfight is, because these dogfights, man, when it's like 6 on 10 or whatever the odds are, where I'm outnumbered and I have to try to command 6 ships.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I just fetal positioned all my ships into a ball and then tried to line them all up so they were all aiming at the right spot.
Mm.
Is there anything more about the combat that you'd like us to talk about?
Well, I had a question I wanted to ask you, but hearing talk about micromanagement has kind of made me answered the question for me. Maybe I could show you what I was. Let's see. Let me try sharing my screen here. Let's see. Okay,
Vince, you may want to change the presentation over to Darius now.
Okay, so this is something that didn't make it in the build. In the build I gave all of you guys, this was removed to simplify things, and I'm thinking that might be a better way to do it. But there's this ship status screen, and you've got this power bar. Each of these generators contribute power. The different components use up power, and you can turn systems on and off in order to rebalance your power and have things turn on where you want them to. And it sounds like with the micromanagement of the ships as it is, further managing which guns on the ships are turned on would not be fun.
Oh man, that sounds fun, but like only if I had one ship. Like if I just had like a Death Star ship that just had like all this weaponry that I had to, like if I had to switch between the long range stuff, medium range stuff, and short range stuff, like as my enemies moved around me, that sounds hilarious and awesome.
So that was,
I think you could actually accomplish it in a multi-ship setup in a way that's player friendly, though. What you just described was, when I say you, what you, Darius, just described and showed on the screen, was I'm in a match and I'm controlling my fleet of X number of ships, and I pick a particular ship and pop open his interface and pick a particular item and offline it and online another one, and I sort of do that multiplied by my number of ships, and that does sound kind of tedious.
yeah.
I would have that be like the advanced mode. Like, I'd let you do it so that you could make those adjustments for like a really unique situation that you get in a battle. But as the like 99% case, I'd have you create profiles out of game, like in your ship equipment screen, and say in there, I want to create like, this sounds a little bit wonky to use this terminology, you might want to work on the language, but I'll create a power profile where I'll pick some things are online and some things are offline, because presumably I've equipped my ship with more stuff than it can power all at once.
Right.
And I'll say, okay, so like all of the left side guns are online and all the right side guns are offline, and I'll bind that to power profile 1, and then I'll do the inverse and I'll bind that to power profile 2. And then when I'm in game, I can just quickly shortcut the power profile for that ship, like by pressing a number key or an icon on the HUD, and it automatically rebalances the whole system for that ship. And then I treat that as like an action, like, because I think that's the way you think about it in a fantasy, right? You're thinking about divert power to engines, get out of there.
Right.
Which you want to be able to express that in game as divert power to engines, rather than quick open up the ship's panel and turn off the guns and turn off the other thing and turn on the, and it's like a multi-step thing.
Right.
But I think that sounds awesome, and I feel like what you're going for is a complex. I mean this lovingly, nerdcore strategy game.
Yeah.
And that feels like the kind of feature that, like I wasn't talking very much earlier because I was playing, and like the game takes all of my brain power to play. Like I just get completely engrossed in building up my strategy, which feels cool.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't worry about it being complex. I would just worry about making the complexity accessible and player friendly.
Mhm.
One thing you could do is have it as a difficulty setting. Like, that's something that you manage if you're playing on the hard difficulty. If you're playing on easy difficulty, then the game manages it for you.
Mhm.
Another thing you could, or a question I have associated with that is, do systems get damaged during a fight? So
They
you have to redirect power other places.
They do. That's also been patched out of this version. It's I've been having trouble balancing things so that your weapons don't die the very instant you start taking damage.
Right.
But yes, that was also something I had in mind.
Okay.
I wish that I saw my ship's status in terms of health or damage systems. I realize there's not damage systems right now, but like I don't know how to see that in a battle right now.
Oh, you can hover over your ship and you'll see the gray quarter circles. Those are armor, and then there's the green inner circle, and that is your health.
Oh, okay. I read that as like cursor highlight. Like this guy is selected. Like that didn't even come across to me at all as this would be my health and status.
Mm.
I think it's because the green is the same green as the lines and the waypoints.
Oh, yeah.
Like if that was a different color, and if the gray, I mean, even with you having it up right now, I find the gray kind of hard to see. It doesn't really pop. If the gray was like a bright white, you know, and maybe if you even pulled those out further, like made that whole circle, the radius of that whole circle larger. There's a few things you could maybe try there to help make that feel a little bit more like an active element and not just a selection cursor.
You could also do a green cross instead of a circle.
Oh,
like a health cross.
Just as a little graphic designery tip, if you look at the color picker, the color picker program, stay out of that top right hand corner. You know where they've got like you got your
the max value and max saturation.
Yeah.
Oh, where I've got a lot of the stuff right now.
Yeah. Just stay out of like that little it's like like that 1/8 of that grid.
That's fine.
It's just stuff that's usually it's hard on the eyes, and the longer you have to stare at it, the more you want to not look at it.
Okay, that is.
And that can be easily solved by just adding a little bit of gray to all these colors. I mean, you have to see which ones work and which ones don't, and mess around with it. But yeah, definitely from a graphic design point of view, these colors that you use for your UI are pretty harsh.
Okay.
Did we want to cover? Did Jeff have anything to say? / did we want to cover UI stuff now, or do you want to talk more about this?
I can jump in on a few things. I mean, most of the conversation you guys have been having, I pretty much agree with, so I haven't had much to add or detract. I did have a couple of radical thoughts when playing it earlier today. One was looking at the core mechanics and the amount of complexity you're going for. I mean, as you guys were talking before, deciding on how deep nerdy to go, is fine. It can be the most complex thing on the face of the earth as long as it's true to those decisions. But one of the things that kept occurring to me is, man, this feels like a turn-based game because of that amount of complexity. A Fallout, an XCOM, something like that, where I'm able to manage so many different systems, take a turn, see how it plays out, stop, readjust everything. I don't know if you ever thought about that or if it started from there and went to the start and stop real-time stuff, but my brain kept going back to that. Man, this feels like an extension of XCOM.
I wonder if so. I kind of mentioned this earlier. In the top right, there's a button that will advance the game 5 seconds and then automatically pause it. I wonder if it would be helpful too if I limited if I had the option to limit your movement to 5 seconds, so that you could only plan 5 seconds in advance, and then you'd hit the play button and it would do it, and then you'd be right back where you were before with another 5 seconds to plan for. Does that sound like that would help?
It becomes a hybrid at that point in time, where instead of a space or movement distance, your turn distance is time, which is a unique concept for a turn-based game. It also makes it a little bit easier to bounce between a complicated battle scene, and I've got 5, 6, 10 different ships trying to play out.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of, okay, I go to this one, I give it the orders, I go to the next one, I give it the orders, I go to the next one, I give it the orders, and then I get to watch it play out, and then I can go and readjust the orders again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Homeworld 1 or 2?
Yeah.
Also, that started coming up a lot. But Homeworld was different because it wasn't time-based, it was distance-based like any other RTS. Hey, I select this group of ships, say, go here, and they do their automatic firing as they pass through things. You didn't have that level of complexity per ship to really think about.
Mm-hmm.
And if the goal of the design is to really get the player to be able to have that much complexity and focus on it, then it seemed providing the game environment and the user interface, which I'll touch on in a minute, to support a gameplay at that level of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Because that essentially becomes your core mechanic, and then everything else is set dressing on top of it to sell that core mechanic. And then on UI, I know you guys were talking about it a bit. This screen, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what to do and found it difficult to figure it out.
Uh-huh.
And it could be a combination of, I'm not sure what the map is trying to tell me, the purple used for the ship blends into all the planets it's on top of, so it took forever to see, oh, I'm moving a ship through this world.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of, at least for me, lots of feedback that I visually don't understand. On the battle scene, and you guys may have talked this before I joined, the weight of the line between the blue and the green one
Mm-hmm.
threw me off. So like going through the tutorial before playing it, I read everything but didn't understand it, and then when I started moving the buttons around, it made a lot more sense.
Uh-huh.
But it feels like more differentiation between the thing where I'm telling it where to go and the speed versus the node it's actively going towards. And maybe it's the blue line is thinner, it's translucent, it's a dotted line, but something that says this is unlike the other.
I think a dotted line would work really well there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want it to feel, because you essentially got two different commands based on this line. And they ended up really liking setting up nodes and watching the curves play out and the ship, rotate and move on it, which is kind of cool. But giving the blue line the same weight as the green line, which is your active lines, what the ship's actually doing, just felt, I want to say wrong, but it felt like it was fighting for it. It needed a different visual language to communicate that this is a different thing, other than just the same weight with a color.
It's a good idea.
Am I on an island with that, or did anyone
No.
else talking about the same things?
I definitely agree. I think it would help with the clarity a lot.
And when I joined, I thought you guys were talking about a good part of the conversation. Is it a single ship game, or is it I'm mastering 5, 10, 20, 30 ships at one point and trying to play out this massive space battle? There was this is an obscure PC game, but does anyone remember or see a game called Stratosphere on the PC from Ripcord? By the dead silence, I would say no.
Sadly, no.
Well, it was a game where it was based around flying one spaceship, and you were able to build that spaceship in a huge way, building on little hexes, and you could put catapults and lasers and offense and defensive stuff all over it. But it was a game that's basically, hey, what does this type of really deep strategic simulation look like if you only control one ship? And the game wasn't that successful. And the things that it faltered from is maneuverability. Even though you had massive options on the ship, it was always a broadside. And you always felt like you were doing the exact same thing every time. You didn't really have a lot of tactics other than, all right, do I beef up my armor or my weapons? So the long-winded explanation for that is, I think focusing on more than one ship is a good thing for this complicated type thing. And like XCOM, deciding what is the optimum balance. Is it, 5 max in a battle? Is it 6? Is it 3? Is it 20? I don't know what that right number is at the moment, but I think that'll be something to think about, is what is the max that you build up to?
Yeah, I think it'd stop a little short of 20. I was thinking around 6 or...
Yeah, how many things can your brain follow? Like, if you look at some magic numbers that are both used in game design and the brain follows, 7 is a pretty consistent magic number. It's one of the few things that, we can keep a list of 7 in our head. It's why our phone numbers are 7 digits. Things like that. So looking at numbers a different way, you could start with that just because it's a number people can keep in their head.
Well, do you count enemy ships in that number as well? Because as far as I'm concerned, you have to pay more attention to the enemy ships than you do your own, because they don't have the little green lines and green overlays telling you what they're doing. You have to figure that out by meticulously looking at how they move between pauses.
Yeah, and you based on that, you could also look at, hey, let's say I got into this massive battle of this 40-ship armada. Maybe that massive thing is then broken apart into, hey, I've got my 4 ships, and 3 break off of that armada. When I destroy them, then 3 more break off. And I just sort of whittle away, because the battles are always constrained in that regard.
Speaking of the psychology of keeping track of items, this, like Jeff was saying, 7, 3, and 5 are other numbers that show up frequently.
Yep.
Of things, but it's not just 7 items, because we have an ability to group things and treat them as one item when they're separate things, right? You can memorize 7 words really easily, and there's way more letters than there are words in that sense, right? So if you have 3 ships that are all exactly the same and you're going to keep them clumped together, like, you probably treat that in your mind as one, right? And so that's easier to manage cognitively. So there's things that you can design maybe with your enemy setups and different things where that becomes more easy to manage in your head.
Yep.
Good ideas.
All right, Darius, is there anything in particular you want us to focus on next, or do you want us just to keep picking stuff?
Well,
Can I ask, can you explain what the intent of this mode and map and things are?
yes. So, let's see, I'm not muted. Okay. Have you played the games Flotilla or Weird Worlds? What is it?
I'm familiar with Weird Worlds.
Anyway, I had, and I'm discovering that my writing abilities aren't quite up to the task, but I'd imagined this world that was kind of a parody of internet culture, and especially all the bitterness and anger. And the idea is that it's called Flame Warrior because in the future everybody has clone backups, and so you can kill them as many times as you want, and they never die permanently, and so killing people is socially acceptable way of settling internet arguments. And so you take on jobs to go out and basically settle these internet arguments. And the idea was that the map would kind of give you a chance to journey around the world and have non-combat sort of interactions go on to give you a feel for the world, and yeah, so something weird like this. And
I was laughing, but my mic was muted.
and so that was kind of the purpose of this. Also, I needed some sort of framework to wrap the missions around in. I thought about having a story, but I thought that if I had this kind of free form where random events occur, that it would be a lot easier for me to release small content patches, with another 20 random events, and it would just fit seamlessly into the game, so that I could slowly build up the game and make it something bigger that people would play. So does that kind of answer the question, or?
Yeah. It's trying to be the macro view of this world and give you some guide as to, well, if you're given a mission to go somewhere, what are the steps in between here and there, and what will you encounter trying to get there?
Right.
To oversimplify it, it looks like a puzzle quest map then, of just telling me where my navigation is limited to and how do I get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good analogy for it. Comparison.
What's the green flag mean?
That means there is a mission at that planet that you can take.
And how do you take a mission?
You click on the green flag. You're only allowed one per day, though. So the idea is that you're participating in a game show to win fame and glory as a flame warrior, and the rules allow you to take one mission per day.
The end state is when the 30 days are up, right?
Right, and you get a score, and eventually there'll be a high score table. I don't have that implemented yet. Oh, there's that bug.
Unintended behavior.
Yeah. So I guess from what I've described and from what you've seen, does this metagame do anything for you? Do you think it'd be better off without it?
If the heart and soul of the game is building up the ships and going into battle, then I'd actually flip the question around, which is, how does this then get me from one battle to the next and provide me context of why I'm going into battle? If it did that, then I think the macro view and the macro would be fun, opportunity for humor to get across all the depth of the story that you're describing. And right now, it doesn't appear to be helping you get from battle to battle, or at least I couldn't figure out from where it is right now how it's helping me in that core game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's.
I'll make an argument
the
for
pop-ups and the missions and the ability for humor and all this stuff, which is cool. And it could be that you've got lots more plans for this, and it's just not there yet.
I'll make an argument for what it is good for. It's a word that I often hear thrown around in game design is called denouement, which basically means like a resting spot for the player, where it's like a safe place where they can relax their brain for a minute, which is basically what this is functioning as. It's a place where the player can feel safe and not have to worry about the real stress and meat of the game. Now, that's not to say that you still need this menu. You could implement that sort of phase in between your dogfights without leaving the playfield, as it were, to this menu. I mean, that's purely up to you, but it definitely does serve that purpose, and something needs to serve that purpose so that the player doesn't constantly feel that stress of being in the middle of an event that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I will say for my part, I feel like the metagame is just kind of too early right now to really sell itself.
Okay.
But what and maybe given some more development, it'll get to that point. I mean, it's just there's obviously some in-depth stuff here, and that's fine. What I feel like I personally really want, though, is the ability to set up a custom battle. Like I kind of think of it like I think of like strategy games, like a Civilization or something, where I can play like the scenarios or whatever, but me personally, and for my own taste, I usually don't do that. I usually go into the custom game where I can do things like decide how big the world map is going to be and what the random generation algorithm is going to be and how lush do I want the world and how many civilizations, and I want to be these guys and start over here and like play with all the variables. In this game, it's like I feel like I want to be able to say, these are the ships I'm going to have in my fleet, the classes, the equipment. Here's the ships the enemy's going to have in their fleet. Here's the algorithm for laying out asteroids in the field or whatever other kind of field objects you're going to have. Like, I want a dense asteroid field battle that's hard to maneuver in against, 12 enemy ships that are all dreadnoughts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And just be able to go play that scenario. Because I do enjoy even in its early state, I do enjoy the tactical battles. But I feel like whether I get a battle that's like a fun layout or kind of a mad layout from this metagame is kind of a crapshoot because I don't know anything about the mission I'm going to take in terms of what it's actually going to look like tactically. I just have this little piece of fiction which doesn't correlate to what the layout's going to be.
Right. Okay, that is good to consider.
With the missions being somewhat random, because you don't know what they're going to be when you accept them, it makes it harder to get an interest curve and like a difficulty learning curve and pacing into the game to where it's optimal, right? Since I guess you can put that in your algorithm of how you decide missions and stuff. But if I'm playing through and I'm trying to do a score attack for my 50th run I've ever played the game, I don't want to have to play through small missions again, right at the beginning. Like, my interest curve is way different now than it was when I played the game for the first time. So maybe having different solar systems or different, this wouldn't be solar system, I guess different galaxies or something, I don't know, that you're in, have different, you start in one and then you move to another one where you have different types of difficulty curves or different levels of challenges, then that could resolve that in some way. There's probably better ways of resolving that issue, but that is one thing that I would worry about.
Right.
Now Josh is getting to the phase I was in where I was just kind of lining up all my green.
Just set up a trap and wait for him to come. It actually has never worked well for me either. Like, I pretty much get hosed because they get around my firing arcs and then I can't turn my ships around fast enough.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish that I could like pick an enemy target to say everyone should prioritize this to the extent that they can.
Uh-huh.
And I also wish I had some way of getting information about the enemy ships. Like, this guy back here, for example, is shooting missiles at me, but I didn't know he was going to be able to do that until he started actually doing it.
Right.
Like, it would have like a scanner or something if you wanted to theme it. Because like the first thing that I do when I come into a new battle is say, is drag up to where the ships are and see, okay, what am I fighting?
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't really know when I see them. I know that I'm fighting 4 dudes and they're in a square.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that I have suffered a terrible defeat. See, the barricade strategy does not work well.
Probably none of us have played this game enough to know, but if there is a one optimal strategy, then you probably want to balance away from that.
Balance that away.
But um, yeah, diversity in strategies, especially a diversity of strategies based on the terrain and based on the enemy ships. You want that.
Yeah, that's where that previous game I was mentioning, Stratosphere, ended up. It was the game just evolved into one strategy, and therefore it got really boring quickly.
Tell you what, this game doesn't pull any punches. Like, it very quickly gets to a point where I'm extremely outnumbered, and now I have to try to figure out all this stuff that I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just eat a kitten, Josh?
I have eaten so many kittens in this game, you have no idea.
You're my hero.
You get a gem from it! The kitten always has a gem in its stomach. It's really kind of a weird event, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I wrote that like midnight or something. Haven't pulled it out yet, though.
Can I buy new ships, like, to expand my fleet? Or do I have to rely on events and people deciding they want to join me?
The idea was that you would have to rely on events for people to join you, but once they joined you, you'd be able to trade up their ships to different ones. That is currently disabled, as are many of the features. Yes, that was in the plans.
I kind of want, and maybe this is all in the plans too later on, but it seems like the stuff that I can equip my ships with right now are either your baseline things like an engine or a weapon, an engine or a power cell or something, or they're weapons in the sense of being straight up guns that do damage to enemies.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I want to expand the tactical space with like utility modules that could do things like lock down an enemy's movement or temporarily lock down his weapons, or like allow one of my ships to feed energy into a second ship's shield, so it's like a support tank kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean tank in the MMO sense. You know, having some of those kinds of things that let me start to develop strategies that are a little bit more, well, a little bit less direct, right? Instead of just everyone move into range and pound everything until it's out of hit points. Because like the biggest trouble that I'm having right now is like I have these missile ships and their missile launchers are really powerful and they're cool, but they've got the big dead zone in the close range, which is interesting. Don't ever change that. That's a cool like downside to having missiles. But I'm fighting these little enemy ships that like to fly inside of that dead zone, and I have a hard time maneuvering away from them. And that's all good, but I don't feel like I really have anything I can do about that. And so I wish I could like put a support ship out in front of my missile ship that could drop a stasis field or something, so I can lock those dick little fighters right down in the missile kill zone, and some of that kind of stuff.
Maybe a tractor or tractor beam function where I can just link a ship to one of those, or link a small one.
Drag it around wherever you want it to go or whatever.
Exactly, it becomes a little trailer behind it.
That kind of stuff would be rad. Or deploying like a little drone turret that can, like a little point defense thing, cover a little space.
And now you're talking Gradius.
Yeah! Pseudo turn-based Gradius.
Now I completely agree on the utility-based stuff of making decisions of, you know, do I want to cloak the ship, timing of being cloaked, not firing to put everything on shield, just, you know, more than just offense. I mean, you're already going, you know, whole hog into the deep end on complexity and stuff. In this case, I personally don't see harm in giving more options like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to reverse tractor beam a meteor and
Shove them away.
and to another ship, right? An enemy ship, and kill the enemy ship.
Yeah, why
Well,
not?
that's the question I was going to ask. What about ship collisions? It seems like there are none right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that the case right now, or is that the intended design, or?
Well, I think the AI for this was a little bit tricky for me, and I figured by removing the collisions, that that was actually another thing that was a good thing about moving from the turn-based combat to the real-time, is that the AI got incredibly simpler. So that might be something I could re-implement, because I had always thought that it would be really cool to have a ship that specializes in ramming other ships or
Heck
that
yeah.
sort of thing.
That's like quintessential space fantasy in my book.
Yeah. A visual interface observation. Sorry for the tangent really quick, but just noticed it while watching the battles play out. I mean, there's a wonderful opportunity of, hey, click the battle in motion, zoom in, and watch cool things happen. You know, here's a scene from Star Wars or something. The one issue that I've noticed, and curious if anyone else sees this, when they're firing their lasers and their missiles, the yellow and red lines, it looks like the same type of interface that when you're creating the nodes and the waypoints and stuff.
Oh, right.
And to me, it feels like a little bit more differentiation between the lasers and the weaponry when they're in battle mode versus the tactical decide what they do mode would benefit it. Even down to, like, you know, the red lasers are, you know, not as hot. They're just more translucent or something to try and make them not feel like they're part of this mode right here. Does that make sense to anyone?
I totally know what you mean.
And I think it also helps the user with a, oh, I'm in battle mode versus I'm in tactical decision-making mode, and making sure that it's a very distinct transition. Like,
it feels clearer to me when other things are going on alongside the lasers. Like when all these missiles are on the screen,
yeah.
I don't get confused. But when I'm only seeing lasers, it does get a little weird. It's like, wait, is the enemy plotting like, there's just a moment in my head where I'm like,
exactly, yeah.
There's something going on with when I'm trying to, like, do U-turns.
Yeah.
Like, when I don't understand why it blocks me, and I want to think it's that I have a limited turn radius, which makes sense physically. But then, like, I feel like I should be able to drag way out here or something and have it complete the turn, and it doesn't. It's like there's just a raw angle threshold that it rejects or something.
What it is it keeps track of how long it would take your ship to accelerate to that position, and it rejects anything over a certain amount of time. I don't remember what it is, something like 100 seconds. For a while, what was going on is you would drag you'd be dragging the waypoint around, and then suddenly the trajectory lines would just go flying off the map, and it would be, I think it was as bad as having the waypoint restricted. It seemed like having the lines suddenly explode off the screen was even more confusing. So I've been thinking about adding some additional UI to show where you can move the nodes, so that when you move them off the screen, you'd see why, or you'd see that you were moving it outside the area.
I really wish I could zoom out far enough to see the whole field. Like, I keep pulling back on my mouse wheel and it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, when one of your ships goes off the edge of the screen and you just lost it,
yeah,
it's kind of frustrating.
Like, I literally can't zoom out far enough to see, like, the whole missile range. Especially if this guy's turned this way.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this guy drives me nuts more than anybody. Like, I can only see his dead zone.
All right, we're getting close to the end of our time. Is there anything else that we missed that you'd want us to touch on before we have to let you go?
I was curious if we could take a little, some more looks at the ship customization screen.
Let me restart here and I'll jump over into it. Assuming we can resolve host. Apparently that's hard.
Yeah, my web host, I'd go with somebody else next time, but.
Okay, so here.
Yeah, so Does this look too busy? I'm just curious what your impressions of this screen are.
My very first impression was that I felt overwhelmed, but it wasn't necessarily because it's way too complex of a UI. I always feel this way when I play a complex game that has like a paper doll system and stuff until I know how the game works. You know, like the first time I come in this menu, it's like, okay, there's all these icons all over. I understand that I've got like slots on my ship for stuff. I don't yet know what the stuff is because I'm not familiar with the icons yet. I wish there was a little flyover when I mouse over these things that are equipped so that I could tell what they are instead of having to click each one and then look down here in the lower right corner to see what comes up. It would just help me like understand what's on my ship more quickly, a more kind of user-friendly way. There are some cases like, so I've got this engine or this generator selected, and it says it produces 10 power. But that number is kind of meaningless to me because I don't have a number anywhere on the screen for my power. I've got this meter over here, but I don't know what number this meter represents. It's also unclear to me, is this 10 power per second, or does this produce 10 additional maximum power in my power pool? There were a couple of other cases of that same sort of ambiguity, like this machine gun's damage, is that damage per second or damage per shot? So there's just a few cases like that where the units are unclear. The engine thrust is another example of a number that's kind of meaningless to me. Like, I understand that an engine with a thrust of 20 is stronger than one with a thrust of 10, and maybe that's all I need to know about engines, but I don't know how to map 10 into my in-game experience until I've played a ton. Those were my initial thoughts on this screen. I did not, until you told me on this call, I didn't even notice that I had an inventory. Like, you told me at the beginning of the call to click into the inventory, and I was like, oh, I can have stuff. Whoops. So I don't know why that escaped my notice, because it's a great big button over here, but...
To add to that, the light laser all pointing to the right.
Oh, yeah.
My first thought was, okay, my ship can only fire to the right side.
No, and there's the fact that all these things have a particular firing arc in-game that you see very visually, and that matters a great deal, but you can't see the arc here.
Right. I'd love to be able to click on one of those and see a dotted line show me the direction it fires, maybe the distance. If the camera has to zoom out to show me the distance when I click on it, great. But just like Josh was saying, the more visual feedback that you can get outside of numbers. I click on a thing and it gives me information on what it does. Like, oh, okay. And even with the lasers, to go one step further in complexity, it's cool to be able to decide what slot to put them in. But if I could decide what angle or what north-south-east direction it could point in, okay, that's one more cooler level and gives me one more level of strategy of how do I outfit. Or that can be an upgradable laser too.
Like, do I want to focus all four of these lasers forward, or do I want to have them going out 180 degrees to either side?
Correct.
Or like making an X shape of threat coming off the ship or whatever?
Right.
That'd be way
On
cool.
a systems point of view, is there a limit to how many, like for example, there's what, 10 spots on here. Could I put lasers on all 10?
No, if you go ahead and click on the laser, you'll notice some of the spots turn red.
Right.
What does the red mean?
So I
red
probably can't drop it right there.
Yeah.
Right. But on the green ones back here, I could drop it.
Then I would either color code or shape that says, hey, this is a weapon slot, so only weapons can go here. This is a power slot, only power can go here. If you want to have it limited that way, then I'd come up with a graphic message to make it easy for players to understand it.
Yeah, like you could do like a diamond slot for the weapons and a square or circular slot for the utility stuff.
It could be simple, circle,
Is it
square.
just those two?
What's that?
No, it seems more to correlate with the location on the ship rather than a slot type.
Yeah. Well, like slots on the outside of the ship generally have weapons. You can generally put a generic utility thing anywhere.
Right, and engines can only go on the back.
I mean, to me, it's a system decision of, is it a type of slot, or is it, based on energy, or based on the amount of energy that my core systems, like for example, if I only had one thruster and one engine or generator, okay, maybe that only affords me one laser, and then I have to add more generators before I can add more lasers, and that you use your power meter on the right to actually have a line that says, "Oh, you've overloaded it."
Yeah, that's actually what that gray line is supposed to show, but I don't explain that anywhere, so you'd have no idea.
I didn't.
Consuming more power as I add these missiles in.
One other quick
Engine
thought.
would be faster.
Thinking of the world of RPGs, if the game was set up to build on itself, your first ship would have, maybe 2 slots open and only 2 things you could pick from, and eventually you buy open a slot and expand it, so that way no one's overwhelmed like we are looking at everything at the same time.
So maybe start them with a ship like this one that's only got a few slots, or.
Right. Yeah, start small and allow them to build, reduce the options, think fast food menu.
Mm-hmm.
Start someone with a few things that they could see and keep in their head, and then build off of it later. It feels like we're starting out in the mid game.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to make more, you wanted to add more Skinner box elements to it, you could make certain weapons. You have to unlock them first before you can equip your ship with them. And I don't know, maybe you're already doing that. But.
Yeah, Skinner boxes are always, I don't know.
I agree with you. but they are always bad. A progression system can be a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's whether
For
you're
a game like this, if you use it as a way to introduce people to stuff with some controlled pacing, so that they're not just totally overwhelmed by, oh my god, there's 500 things I can attach to my 4 million slots on my 37 ships, then it's probably good. If you use it as an addiction mechanism, that's probably more what you're responding negatively to.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I could probably even have something in a menu to turn off the, so you could have all 4 million options to begin with, or just have it parcel it out to you. It's an excellent idea.
The inventory, where you have the view inventory, part of the problem of Josh, or everybody else probably, not realizing where it was, is we're used to having tabs at the top.
Uh-huh.
So if you made it a tab system, that might be better. Or made like the shop, or a half measure solution, we'd make the shop look like a button, and then inventory next to it look like a button, and you switch between. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think tabs would probably be ideal. Kind of like what's it called? I'm so tired right now as a baby. But the spaceship game that everybody loves.
Gratuitous space battles?
No,
Me?
FTL.
FTL. That's the word. So kind of like their tab inventory system, like their shop system isn't the same as their inventory system, but yeah, similar to that.
All right. Yeah. I agree with a lot of what people said. I feel like your ship just being laid in the back in all its color on this screen gets a little messy. I think you could just do like some sort of colored silhouette of the ship. That might, just it's distracting and it's overcomplicated for what we're doing right now. And I feel like a silhouette would just accomplish the same thing.
Or like a stylized wireframe or something that makes it feel like you're looking at the blueprint or the cross-section or some kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
schematic that you're plugging your modules into.
I would also like to be able to know what the ship does at a cursory view without having to look at all of what's specifically attached to it. Right. So if you had like amount of damage, like a damage bar, a shield bar, you already have the power bar. The speed bar.
Engine thrust, speed, or maneuverability.
Yeah, like have those bars that are just there as kind of like a meta for your ship. That could be nice to have.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you could add another one that is cost. I don't know if that matters in the game or not, like your costs. It matters if you lose the ship, then lose everything that you invested into it or whatever. But,
Well, and for repairs too, right? I kind of noticed a repair system.
yeah.
Right.
So cost could matter. Maybe that's another bar.
All right, this seems like a good spot to wrap us up. It's been about an hour. And I will let everyone have a chance to promote themselves in some way. I'm going to go from left to right on my screen again, so starting with you, Darius.
All right. Well, thank you all for this opportunity. That some great feedback. I'm excited to implement. Is come out to flamewarriorgame.com to see a web page that updates every 2 or 3 months. And yeah, thanks again.
And you, Jeff?
Sorry, you say Josh or Jeff?
Jeff.
Sorry. This is Jeff Peters, industry consultant, and most recent project to ship out their Boulder Dash 30th anniversary, reimagining a new classic.
And Josh Sutphin.
Well, I am Josh Sutphin, and my current project is Legacy of the Elder Star, a mouse-driven shmup. You can find it at elderstargame.com.
And Lyle Cox.
Lyle Cox. You can find me at Lyle Cox on Twitter. My game is Together on Men Safe. You can find it at togetherthegame.com.
And I am Vince Betteridge. I host Raptor Circus, and I'm also developing a game tentatively titled Silly Doom, where we shoot stuff and make them like us instead of die. Thanks for coming, and I will now end the broadcast.